Hey everybody, welcome back into the channel. In today's video, we're going to do something that actually I forgot to do last year, and a couple of you pointed it out on an older video and said, where is our review, our updated review on your SSL console on the Origin? I did a review, I think, after about 6 months and then after about 2 years, and I haven't done one since. So we're going on 4 years that I've owned this console. And a couple of people in the last video that must have watched it recently said, oh, this video is a couple years old. Do you have another review video? And I thought, you know, I totally forgot to do that. That's a good idea. I want to bring everybody up to speed on, now that I've had this console almost 4 years, what do I think of it? What do I like? What do I don't like? Have I had any issues? And answer some of the more common questions that come in about working with a console in general, and specifically to the SSL Origin, and kind of update people. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So make sure you like and share and subscribe. And by the way, I will link in the description below the last 2 review videos I did. One after 6 months, one after I think it was 2 years or 18 months or something like that. I don't remember, but I'll link them below and you can check it out. So I have some of the information here on my notes that I just want to read from here to make sure I capture everything. And again, some of this information will be the same if you've seen the last 2 videos, and some of this information will be brand new to you if you have not seen the videos. So first and foremost, let's talk about the console when it was purchased. So this console was purchased in June of 2021, and it was delivered on July 7th, 2021. We have a whole series of videos on the delivery, the uncrating, showing the unboxing, if you will, the uncrating of the console, and a whole slew of videos on how we installed it and all the different configurations and hooking up the hardware and all of that stuff. Again, that's in a playlist on the channel. You can check that out. I'll try to remember to link that down below as well. So it was delivered on July 7th of 2021, and it is documented in a video. The cost that I paid for this console, and I purchased this from Sweetwater. At the time, I paid $49,500 US is what I paid for it. I think today it probably runs around $55,000 or $59,000, and every so often I'll see they knock a few thousand off for a temporary period of time. But this is before all the price increases and all the chip shortages and everything after COVID. I got lucky that I got this in 2021. We were right in the middle of the pandemic, but before all the pricing went up. People have asked me many times over the years, how did I pay for this? Did you put it on your Sweetwater card? Did you pay for it in cash? How did you finance such a large purchase? And the truth of the matter is, I used a third-party lender through Sweetwater. They work with a couple of companies that specifically work with studios and people that are into pro audio gear. I worked with them to finance it, like a car payment or like a mortgage payment for 5 years. So I have just under, no, I think I got exactly 1 year. As I sit here and record this video, I have exactly 12 more payments to make, and I'm about to make a payment next month or next week for the upcoming month. So I got 12 more payments on it, and I financed it. And then the interest rate at the time, and again, interest rates are so different today. Everything is so much higher, but back then there was right around the 2.5, I think it was like 2.8 something. It was under 3, just under 3%, is what I financed it for. And in hindsight, to be totally honest with you, I probably wouldn't finance it if I had to do it over again. I could have bought it in cash, to be honest, as a business. But the reason why I finance it was because as a business, I've never taken a loan or had any credit outside of a business credit card. And I thought at the time it would probably be a good idea to have a business loan on my record or on the books. So down the road, if I ever needed to get a loan, it would be easy and I can show a history of good payments as a business. So getting money wouldn't be a problem. That was the thinking at the time, and I probably wouldn't do that again, just because why spend the extra money if I could have bought it in cash? But you know, everybody's financial situation is different. But that's how I did it anyway. Sweetwater set me up with the company, and the company was really simple. You know, it was all online, and you know, talked to a guy on the phone, and they sent me an application. They did a credit check, blah blah blah. It was a simple, painless process, and Sweetwater made it very easy. So I highly recommend that if you're going to make a purchase of this size, to buy it from someone like Sweetwater, where you will have great customer service and support and all of that. And I'll link all this stuff down in the description box. So if you decide to buy a console, I will get a commission, as that's an affiliate link. And thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. So that's when it was purchased, that's what it was purchased for, and that is how I financed it. So my overall experience, and then we'll get into some individual questions that I continue to get asked pretty regularly. So overall, as I said in the last 2 reviews, it's been a wonderful experience. I mean, when I bought the console, as I said in my other review videos, I bought this console not because I necessarily thought it was going to sound better than digital and all of that. We can get into that in a bit. But I really bought it because I grew up on a console way back in the day in studios when I was in a band and stuff and playing, and I interned a little bit, but more as a recording engineer, not really a mixing engineer. And I never worked on an SSL. We worked on an old Sony console, if I remember right. But we're going back early 90s, early 90s. And since that time, I've been an in-the-box guy. If you know me, you know home recording made easy, and I've been teaching mixing and recording and mastering and compression and EQ and all kinds of courses that are all in the box of plugins. Again, I'll link that website below if you want to go check out that kind of training. And I have a whole nother YouTube channel, as most of you probably know. And love working in the box, love working with plugins, but I really wanted to experience I said, you know, one day before I'm old and gray and sitting in the old folks home, I want to know what it's like to really work on this stuff. And so I wanted to expand my business, and I decided to go ahead and get a console. And again, there's videos on the channel talking about all of that, why, who, when, and all the players involved. And I did. And so, but when I got into it, I didn't get into it thinking, oh, it's going to sound better than plugins and all of that. I really wanted to experience the workflow, the tactile workflow, working with hardware in a console. And that's really why I got into it. And the more that I have worked with it, and even to this day, the more I just love working in this format. And I have absolutely no regrets whatsoever purchasing this particular console or any console in general and working with analog. There's so many benefits to it. Aside from the sound, it's crazy, and it's so much more fun and inspiring to work than it is working in the box. So have I had any issues as far as that goes, or any regrets, or any issues with the console in and of itself? The answer is no. It's going on 4 years. There's been no maintenance issues. There was, and I think I said it in another video, I thought there was a problem with the console, and it actually turned out not to be the console, where we thought that we had on channel 12 here, the insert button, when you would engage it, it suddenly would crackle and crap out, and it wasn't working. And I thought, oh geez, maybe I have a problem with the switch of the button. I was in contact with SSL. We were going to pull the channel strip, so on and so forth. Come to find out, after doing some more in-depth investigation, come to find out it wasn't the console at all. The reason why the insert was having a problem was because it was due to my automation system that's hooked up to the inserts, and that was the problem, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So it really wasn't the console. So since I've purchased it, I haven't had a single issue with it. Knock on wood. I work on this console probably 4 or 5 days a week. You know, I could be anywhere from a few hours a day to a long day if I'm in the middle of a project. So it's not like a commercial studio. This is a private studio. Nobody touches this console but me on a daily basis. I don't rent it out. No producers come here. No artists come here and touch it and drop and spill shit all over it. But it does get worked. It doesn't get worked 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, but it does get worked pretty heavily, I would say. And I haven't had a single issue. No maintenance at all required, no scratchy pots. Everything works the way that you would expect it to and the way it did when it was new, right? Again, knock on wood, because now that I said that, I'm going to have a problem. I would have expected that maybe after 4 years, maybe there would be, you know, a scratchy thing here or there, but there just hasn't been. I take good care of it. I baby it, you know, and when I'm not using it, it gets covered to keep all the dust and stuff off of it, and there's never any dust on it, and I just take care of it, and I have not had any issues after 4 years, which is great. You know, if someone wants to know, are they reliable? Do you have any maintenance issues and stuff? Because some people are are thinking about maybe some of the old vintage style consoles where back in the day, you know, the old E series, the G series, the ones that had the big computer racks that you had to have a machine room and all of that. those consoles tended to be, from what I've been told and what I've read about and what people have said to me, although I've never owned one of those vintage consoles, tended to be more of a maintenance nightmare. These modern consoles today, the way they're built, they're just not. And yeah, no issues at all. Everything works exactly the way as it did when I got it 4 years ago, and I would expect, and after talking to my good friends over at Solid State Logic, I've developed a relationship with them over the last year or so, and we were talking about consoles and, you know, the different consoles that they have. And one of the benefits of the Origin compared to something like the AWS or the Duality, although those have a lot more functionality, which we'll talk about, those consoles have a lot more technology in them, a lot more moving parts, moving faders, computer systems, all kinds of things that those consoles do at a much higher price point, a lot more features, but there's a lot more to go wrong with them. And I was even told by SSL that, you know, the AWSs and the dualities and stuff, if they get used pretty heavily, after 4 or 5 years, there's maintenance that typically needs to be done to them. That's just an expected thing when you're dealing with a lot of moving mechanical parts, where they said, you know, your Origin honestly ought to last you 20 years, 25 years with very little to no maintenance required. And if there's any maintenance that needs to be required to these things, the way these things are built are all modular, and because they're pretty more simplistically built, I guess you can say, compared to the other consoles, that he said if you can use a screwdriver, you could pretty much pull any part out of this thing and replace it. So if you ever needed to pull a channel strip and change something out, you can do it. Or if you needed to pull a channel strip out and ship it over, I believe they have a service center in New York, which is only a couple hours away for servicing, it could be done. If you had to change power supply, they're like, if you can use a screwdriver, you can change a power supply. So, you know, so from a maintenance down the road, or a running cost, if you will, a maintenance cost, there really hasn't been any to this point. So haven't had any issues. So now I want to just maybe answer the questions that that came up in the last videos. I answered them already once, but again, if you're new here and you haven't seen those videos, you may be wondering, or people, even though I've answered those questions, they still send me comments and emails and ask me questions because they probably haven't seen the other video or what have you. So let me deal with the most common things that I get asked about when it comes to this type of console and the Origin specifically. So question number one is power consumption. I still get at, that's the number one thing I get asked about all the time. And people say, oh, your electric bill must have went through the roof, and oh my God, the electric bill, and you're crazy, the electric bill. And I've said this in other videos, and I'll say it again here today. A lot of those folks that make those kinds of comments, they usually follow one or two camps. One, they have no experience even working with any console. They don't know what they're talking about. They read something online and they really are just misinformed. They have no experience, but they comment like they do. Or they're thinking of or have been told by people who own the vintage consoles, like we talked about earlier, the ones where you needed to have the big computer racks with the old school power supplies that had to be in a spare room with a special air conditioning system. And those consoles, in some cases, you never turned them off. You left them on 24/7, because if you turned them off and you didn't know whether they were going to turn back on or not. Those, from what I've been told, I have a friend that owned one. He told me, before he modified all his power supplies and put new modern power supplies, but he said his electric bill would run $1,000 a month just to run that console. This console's not like that. This console, and most modern day consoles from any manufacturer, takes up about as much energy as a desktop computer that stays on and runs all day. Now, I don't run this all day. I do power it down at night. Every single day I power it up, power it down, no problem at all. They don't recommend that I keep it on. This particular console has a sleep mode where you can put it in the sleep mode, and if it doesn't see any activity after a certain period of time, it'll go to sleep automatically. I just turn it on and turn it off every day. No problem. Now, has the electric bill gone up? Well, because I'm in a private studio and because it's kind of tied into my house, it's not a separate electrical service. And I also have a whole bunch of hardware behind me that runs when I run my console. Yeah, there was an increase in my electric bill. Sure there was. Was it some monumental number? Was it like, 25% or 30% more? No, not even close. It was a little more. And again, I don't know the exact dollars. And I knew when I got into this that, yeah, you're running extra equipment, you're spending more electricity, but it wasn't this huge increase in electrical. So the power consumption is not the same as what some people think about when they think about these consoles. So if that's scaring you off, don't be. It's not as bad as you think, or maybe as some people have said. And I'm telling you that from someone who's owned it for 4 years. I can tell you my electric bill has not gone through the roof. Second question I get asked about all the time: how do you deal with recall? There's no flying faders. There's no software package that will help you recall. How do you recall stuff? Now, I did a video a couple of years ago that I should probably update at one point, although all the information in the video is still on point to what I do today, so I don't know if there's a reason to. And again, I'll link it down below. It was something like, don't worry about recalls, become a better engineer, or some clicky baity title like that, where I talked about recall, where I don't do recalls. Very, very few. In 4 years, I've done 2. I don't do them. Why? Go watch the video. I'm not going to spend 30 minutes explaining it to you. But how do I do recall if I have to? I do what you would probably expect. Before I got my wonderful Flock audio patch bay, my digital patch bay, when I was using a manual patch bay, I would go over, take pictures of all the gear, and I would write down on a track sheet where everything was patched, so I had that. And I would take, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pictures of the board with my phone. I put all those photos in a folder that went into my session files, and if I had to, I can blow them up on my big monitor and I can see everything in high resolution and I can recall the board. It takes about 45 minutes to recall the board and all the gear when I was manually patching. Now that I have the Flock Audio XT with the patch app, and again, I have videos on the channel about that, all I have to do, that's all digitally recalled. The only thing I have to do is if I twisted some of the knobs on the gear, I have to go over and reset those with the pictures. But most of the gear, the settings don't change all that much. I drive the signal into the gear from the console, so I don't have to change the sweet spot on the gear in most cases. So that probably brings my recall process down to about 30 minutes. So yes, there is no recall assist on this console. There's no software where you turn the knob and you line it up on a piece of software. That's in the higher AWS consoles and the Duality consoles, but not in this console, not at this price point. So recall, number one, I don't do very many. Number two, if I have to, it takes about 30 minutes. It's old school. It's old school. And I still get asked about that all the time because everybody, seems like a lot of people are really, really focused on recall. And I think for the most part, unless you're in a different kind of a working situation, for the most part, most people don't need to recall stuff nearly as much as they think. And so anyway, go watch the video about my recall process and I'll tell you all about that. The next question I get asked about all the time was, well, how do you deal with automation? You don't have flying faders. What do you do about automation? You can't do automation when you have compressors, pre-compression. You just can't do that. That just ruins everything. I'm being sarcastic. You're right. If you do automation prior to hitting a compressor and you're doing like volume slides, let's say, or volume rides, you're going to change the level in which you hit that compressor, and therefore you're going to get more or less compression. And in some cases, you don't want to do that. And in other cases, they can be so unbelievably subtle, it really doesn't matter. But I'll tell you how I deal with automation, post-processing automation. I talked about this in the last review video, but I didn't have the system installed yet. Now I do. I use the Wes Audio NG levelers, which is a digital way to do post-processing automation that's 100% recallable. I have videos on the channel on how to do that. So basically, to get 32 channels of automation post-insert, post-processing on all my long faders, it's about a $4,000 investment. I have 2 of those Wes Audio NG levelers. Each one is 16 in, 16 out. So I have one unit on the first 16 faders and the other unit tied into the second bucket of 16. I don't have them on the groups in the center on my 8 stereo groups, but if I wanted to, I can get a third one if I wanted to spend another $2,000, and then I can even automate my buses, which at one point I might do. But anyway, that's how I do it. And there's videos on the channel showing you how you do it. That is a perfect solution for people who have a console that doesn't have automation that uses outboard gear for compression. Perfect solution. It works beautifully. Is it as nice as having flying faders and being able to ride the fader on the actual desk? No, it's not that nice. You have to do it with a controller. It's a little bit more, for lack of a better word, a little bit more clunky, but it works. and it's an easy way to do it. Okay, so that's how I deal with automation. You can check out those videos. If I remember them, I'll link them. If not, search my channel for Wes Audio and you'll see all the Wes Audio videos. And the NG Leveler is what I use for automation, and it does work great. The next question I get asked about a lot, or people, when I first bought the console, said, oh, this console isn't the old SSL, the SSL of the old days, because all these are now made in China. All the parts are made in China, where they used to be made all in the UK, and therefore it's not as good. And so I'll tell you what I told the last video when I did that last video, and what I say to all the people. Again, I haven't had any issues with that. I know that the parts are made in China. SSL has always, I think, been very transparent about that. One of the reasons why the cost is, you can get a console like this for less than 50 grand, at least at the time, was because the parts weren't made in the UK. If they were made in the UK, made in the USA, they would be $20,000 more, maybe even more. I can tell you that the knobs, the buttons, the switches, the faders, nothing feels cheap or chintzy to me. I don't know. Again, it's made in China. I know it's all assembled in the UK. At least it was when I bought mine. I know it's all tested in the UK, all the quality control. I haven't had any issues. So for the people that say it was made in China, it's not as good of a console, I don't. Compared to what, I gotta admit, and I'll say, like I've said on this channel before, my guess would be that 90% of the people who actually make those kinds of comments on a YouTube video have never even stood in the room with a real SSL console of any ilk. They've never been in the room with one of these. They've probably never been in the room with another one, and they really don't know what they're talking about. So again, I only say that because for people that it might be in the market that get scared off by some of this stuff, one of the bad things about YouTube, there's a lot of misinformation. A lot of people say things in forums and stuff, and they don't have any experience. I'm making this video for people that want to know, because I have real world experience, and I'm telling you firsthand what the real deal is in my experience. Okay, so you can be rest assured that if I'm telling you something, it's because I know from firsthand experience. Okay, I don't see anything wrong with the build quality. 4 years of using this every single day, I haven't had a single problem. So I don't know. I don't know. So you'll have to make that decision for yourself. But the build quality seems fine to me. Seems fine to me. So don't be worried about that. I really wouldn't worry about that. The next question I get asked all the time, and again, I kind of answered it in the intro. Have you had any maintenance in the 4 years? The answer is no. Nope, no maintenance. It works every single day for 4 years. I'm sure sooner or later I'm gonna have a problem, but so far, knock on wood, no issues. Don't worry about it. And then the last question that I get asked, again, this is actually the number one question, but I put it at the end because it really had nothing to do with the actual origin in of itself. It's analog in general. People ask me all the time, they say this one of two ways. They either think, oh, is it really, how does it sound compared to plugins? We've talked about that a gazillion times on this channel. And even if it sounds better, it doesn't sound $50,000 better. And without getting into a long rant, I'll get into a short rant. I'll just tell you, like I said a little earlier, when I first bought the console and hardware and got into this workflow, I was under the impression and didn't care. I did not get into this with the thinking that it was going to sound better than plugins. I didn't care. I was more interested in the workflow. And that's the truth, because I wanted to know for myself, does it really sound any different or better in my opinion? But mostly it was the workflow, it was the tactile. It was getting away from a mouse and a keyboard and working with a console, and not looking at the screen the whole time and opening up plugins. It was more about hands-on workflow, and it's just cool to have all this stuff, right? It's like a guitar player. You got tons of pedals that you don't need, but they're cool, right? Same kind of thing. That's why I got into it. And I've said this in several videos along the 4-year journey that this YouTube channel's been around. After a few months of working on this, I realized pretty quickly that the sound is way different than working with channel strips. And I don't care who the channel strip's made by. It doesn't matter what plugin company. I have my favorite ones by certain companies that make a replica of this series. But you can go watch other videos that I have on that for that info. But none of them sound like the real thing. And I know that because I've even early on when I was starting to do client mixes, I got constantly people would say the sound, they could not get the sound themselves mixing in their home studio like I got from this thing when they were working all in the box. I have students that I work with, private students, I do mixing training with people, and they work all in the box. They work with channel strips and they kind of emulate stuff. And we've done a few tests where they mixed a song, and they're all pretty good mixers, by the way. And then I said, give me the multi-tracks. Let me mix it on the console for you with hardware. Let me just do it. Let's do an experiment. It was part of our private teaching, for my students. And every single time we did that, they were like, I love the analog mix better. Love the analog. Now, again, the engineers and the skills and all of that, that's all part of it. But they said, this thing's got a sound that they go, I could not get that. They were like, I instantly heard the difference. And that's the truth. It's a different sound than working in the box of plugins. Again, it's not to say you can't get great mixing with plugins. Of course you can. And you can get close enough, if whatever close enough means to you. I can tell you that after working with this a year and now even 4 years in, it's way different than I even thought it was going to be. I thought the differences would be a lot closer. They're not. They're miles apart. They are. And again, I know that's a huge debate, and I know that there are people on YouTube, including a lot of famous audio engineers that used to work all analog and now work all in the box, and they'll tell you it sounds exactly the same and they don't hear any difference. And that's great. I take everyone at their word. Everybody has a different set of ears. Everybody's experience is different. I'm just telling you from one guy who doesn't have a plugin company endorsing me or anything like that to say these things. I'm telling you, there is absolutely no comparison in sounds to a console and hardware to plugins. There's absolutely no comparison. What sounds better to you? It's completely subjective. Both sound great, but they sound vastly different. And by the way, as I'm sitting here thinking of this, as I'm recording this video, I just released a mixing course over at Home Recording Made Easy called Mixing Made Easy Volume 3, Analog versus Digital, where we did just that. I took a song, I mixed it completely on the console with about 10 pieces of hardware, and from start to finish, and then I mixed that same song again from start to finish, all in the box using the same plugins of the hardware counterparts, using an SSL channel strip by SSL, using the same plugins that I used on certain elements in the mix. I took those, whatever I used in hardware, I used plugins, and you get to see that course side by side. You get to watch me mix the song, you get the multi-tracks, you get to mix it along with me, and then you get to hear the difference in the end where we actually compare the two mixes. I spend about 30 minutes doing that. The course is about 6 hours long. I'll link it in the description if you want to check that out. I'm not here to sell you a course. I just thought about that. But so I'm one of the few people that have actually have the luxury or the privilege to be able to work with this kind of a workflow, and then also be able to, right across my studio where you can't see on camera, have an entire in the box rig and mix the same stuff. And I know I work with both the workflows every single day. There's no comparison. Not to mention the tactile feel of the thing is absolutely cool. And it's so much more fun and inspiring to work in this way with this stuff and with all that stuff back there. So does it sound better? I wouldn't say better. I always say different. Does it sound $50,000 different? That's up to you. But I don't regret it at all. And like I said, I wasn't expecting such a big difference, but it is different. It really truly is. The sound of this thing is just, I just love it, but that's just me. So that is my 4-year update review, if you will, of owning this console. And again, I think it's great. At this price point, I don't see where you purchase a console that has all the features, the amount of faders, the amount of EQs and preamps, and the amount of routing capabilities that this console has. I don't know what other company makes a console like this at this price point. Now, if you want all the fancy features, we've done other videos where we talk about, well, if you want automation and what happens if you want recall and you want all those other bells and whistles or more faders or what have you. Like I said, you're starting at a minimum of $100,000 and higher to get all those kinds of features, whether you buy an SSL or a Neve or an API or whatever, what have you. So I still think in this price bracket, I don't know that there's another console on the market. There probably is. I don't know. That has more features than this, I highly doubt it. So I think it's great. Now, since I bought this 32 channel version, SSL also makes the SSL 16, which is really just half the console, 16 faders with 8 stereo groups and a master section. As I sit here and record this video, I don't know the cost of that. It's probably $15,000 or $20,000 less than this one, which is, you know, again, physically smaller, less EQs, less preamps, less faders, but more affordable, if you will. That's another great option, but that option wasn't available when I purchased this. I bought this when it first came out. So I love it. I think it's great. I highly recommend it to anyone that wants to get involved in it. You can watch all the videos on the channel where we talk about watching us install it and how it do, what did we do right, what did we do wrong. I mean, you can binge watch this stuff for the next year. I think I'm the only YouTube channel that has actually put a channel together showing how a console is actually installed. I don't know anyone that's done it. If you guys know of someone, please leave it in the comments because I love checking out other geeky videos like that too. Nobody has done a full extensive series of videos on the experience of purchasing one, installing it, and learning the technology and learning the workflow and documenting it along the way. I don't know anyone that's done that. So go check out all the other videos if you haven't done so already. Let me know in the comments below if you have any more questions about this console specifically. I'd be glad to make a follow-up video, and then maybe we'll do a video in another year or 18 months. Once we get through 5 full years, I'll do another video. Or if I ever have a real problem with the desk, I will document that as well, and then how we fixed it, just for people who want to know, just for information to help you. And that's it. So I will link everything in the description box below so you can check it out. If you have any questions, let me know. I really do appreciate all the support and all the questions. And yeah, until the next video, I've been Dave with Mixing Music Analog and mixingmusicanalog.com. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next video.